It was a rainy afternoon when I found the old diary. I was helping my parents clean out the attic of our new house, an old, creaky place that always felt a little too quiet. We had just moved in, and there was something about the house that made me uneasy, but I figured going through the attic would keep me busy. As I sorted through dusty boxes filled with old stuff, I noticed a small leather-bound book stuck between two old trunks. The diary looked old, its cover worn and cracked. It caught my eye and I couldn't resist picking it up. The name Elizabeth was written on the first page in neat handwriting, followed by a date, October 2nd, 1923. I flipped through the pages, curious about what was inside. At first, it seemed like a normal diary. Elizabeth wrote about her days, her thoughts, and her dreams. But then, as I read more, things started to get strange. She began to describe events that seemed to match things happening in my own life. One entry talked about a new family moving into the house. She wrote about hearing strange noises at night and feeling like someone was watching her. That caught my attention. We had only been in the house for a week, but every night I had felt the same thing, like someone or something was watching me. Another entry from a few days later described finding a hidden room in the house. Elizabeth wrote about how she discovered it behind a wall in the attic, a small room filled with old furniture and a large, cracked mirror. My heart skipped a beat. Just yesterday, I had found a door in the attic that led to a hidden room. It was exactly as she described it, down to the broken mirror. As I read on, the diary started predicting things that hadn't happened yet. She wrote about a cold wind that would sweep through the house, making the windows rattle. That same night, a sudden chill filled the house, and the windows shook as if they were about to break. It felt like the house was alive. Reacting to the words in the diary, the entries became more disturbing. Elizabeth began to write about a shadowy figure that would appear at the foot of her bed, watching her while she slept. I tried to brush it off as just a story, but the fear started to creep in. I couldn't shake the feeling that the diary was somehow connected to me, predicting my future in terrifying detail. The last entry was the most chilling. Elizabeth wrote about a night when the figure would come closer, standing right beside her bed, whispering her name. She wrote that she knew it was coming for her and that she couldn't escape. Her handwriting had become shaky, almost frantic. The entry ended abruptly, with a single sentence: "It knows you're reading this." I slammed the diary shut, my heart pounding in my chest. The room suddenly felt colder, and the shadows in the corners seemed darker, deeper. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, but the fear was too real. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me jump. I kept the light on, staring at the door, half expecting to see a shadow move. But nothing happened. Maybe it was all just in my head, I thought. But then, just as I was starting to calm down, I heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible but clear enough to make the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It said my name. I froze, my eyes wide open, staring into the darkness. The whisper came again, closer this time. I felt a cold breath on my face, and I knew, deep down, that whatever had haunted Elizabeth was now coming for me. I grabbed the diary the next morning and threw it into the fireplace, watching as the flames consumed it. But the fear didn't go away. I could still feel the presence, still hear the faint whispers in the dead of night. The diary was gone, but whatever it had brought into my life wasn't. I realized then that the diary wasn't just predicting my future, it was controlling it. The events it described were happening because I was reading them. And now that I had tried to destroy it, the presence in the house was angry. I don't know what to do. I'm scared to sleep, scared to be alone in this house. But more than anything, I'm terrified of what will happen next. I tried everything to rid myself of the diary's curse. I burned it, buried the ashes, even tried to forget it ever existed. But nothing worked. The house still feels wrong, like it's alive and watching me. Every night I hear whispers, soft at first, then growing louder, more insistent. The shadows creep closer, and the cold breath on my neck returns. I know now that the diary didn't just tell my future. It sealed it. Whatever haunted Elizabeth is now after me, and there's no escape. If you ever find something like this, something that seems harmless but feels wrong, don't ignore it. Some doors are meant to stay closed, and some stories should never be read. If this story made you think twice, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that chill you to the bone. It was a quiet, uneventful evening like any other. The kind where you settle into your favorite chair with a book, or maybe a cup of tea, and let the world drift away. My small house, tucked away in a sleepy neighborhood, had always been a sanctuary. Nothing ever happened here, until that night. I had just finished watching a late-night movie when I heard it, a faint rustling sound coming from the backyard. At first, I dismissed it as the wind, but something about it seemed off, persistent. I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. Grabbing a flashlight, I headed toward the back door. The night was unusually still, the air thick with an eerie silence that made the hairs on my arms stand up. As I stepped out onto the porch, the beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but the familiar outline of my yard. The sound had stopped, and for a moment, I considered turning back. But then, I saw it. A dark shape near the far corner of the yard, partially hidden by the tall grass. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The shape was too large to be an animal, and the way it lay there, motionless, sent a chill down my spine. Slowly, I moved closer, the crunch of gravel beneath my feet the only sound in the oppressive quiet. When I reached the edge of the yard, my heart pounding in my chest, I finally saw it clearly. It was a body. I couldn't move. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, but the reality of it was too overwhelming. The body lying face down in the dirt was that of a man. His clothes were torn, and his skin, pale and lifeless, seemed to glow under the flashlight's harsh beam. I wanted to scream, to run back into the safety of my house, but I was rooted to the spot, unable to tear my eyes away. Who was he? How did he end up here? My mind was flooded with questions, but there were no answers, only the grim reality of the corpse before me. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I needed to call the police, get help, do something. But before I could move, something even more terrifying happened. The body moved. At first, it was just a twitch, a small, almost imperceptible movement. But then, the man's hand slowly clenched into a fist, and his head began to turn. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the flashlight as I watched in horror. This wasn't possible. He was dead. I was sure of it. But now he was moving, and he was looking at me. The man's eyes, glassy and vacant, locked onto mine. His mouth opened, and a low guttural sound emerged like a growl or a groan. It was the sound of something that shouldn't be alive. My heart pounded in my ears as I took another step back, but the man was already getting to his feet, his movement slow and unnatural, as if he were a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. I turned and ran, my feet barely touching the ground as I sprinted toward the house. I could hear him behind me, the rustling of the grass growing louder. Closer. I didn't dare look back. All I could think about was getting inside, locking the door, and calling for help. But as I reached the porch, something grabbed my ankle. I fell hard, the flashlight flying from my hand and skidding across the porch. Pain shot through my leg as I twisted around to see the man's pale, bony fingers wrapped around my ankle. His face now only inches from mine. His skin was cold, deathly cold, and his breath reeked of decay. I kicked out with my free leg, desperate to break free, but his grip was like iron. "No!" I screamed, thrashing wildly. With one final desperate effort, I managed to pull myself free and scramble up the steps. I grabbed the flashlight and swung it at him, but he was already on his feet again, slowly advancing toward me. There was no escape. He was too close. Just as I reached for the door handle, the man stopped. His head jerked to the side as if he were listening to something I couldn't hear. For a moment, he just stood there staring at nothing, his body trembling. Then, without warning, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the yard. I didn't wait to see where he went. I burst into the house, slammed the door, and locked it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone as I dialed 911. The operator's voice was calm, asking for my address, what had happened, if I was safe. But all I could do was stare at the back door, half expecting it to burst open at any moment. The police arrived within minutes, but by then, the man was gone. They searched the yard, the surrounding woods, but there was no trace of him. No footprints, no sign that anyone had been there at all. The officers looked at me with a mix of concern and skepticism, but I knew what I had seen. There was a body in my backyard and it had come back to life. I still don't know what happened that night or who or what I encountered, but every time I step outside, I can't shake the feeling that he's still out there, somewhere in the dark, waiting. If you ever find something strange in your backyard, be careful. You never know what might be lurking in the shadows. Did this story give you chills? If so, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying tales. And let me know in the comments, what would you do if you found a body in your backyard?